Ever prayer circle, which was very powerful, and it was just a really nice evening. Our next one is scheduled for Friday, September 25th, so put that on your schedules. Tuesday this week we have Grief Share with Diane, and that's here in the church from 6:30 to 8:30. Thursday we have our Bible study at 7 o'clock here in the church, and that can still also be accessed through Zoom. We are going through the series called The Chosen, then we discuss it, and it's pretty cool. Saturday, we have our second little young adult life group here. We'll meet in the church at first, and we're going to meet at 2:30. And then also, if you're interested at all in donating blood, there's a blood drive coming up, and that's Saturday, September 5th at the Social Hall here in Elizabeth, and there's more information on the back bulletin board. Thank you. We can now dismiss the lookout.
Yep, lookout. Lookout, the loft, everything that begins with an L. Yawn, yawn. I'm collecting waters here. So it's good to see all the young people here. They were in an escape room last night, is that right? Good to see you all escaped in time for church. How long did that take to escape? 44 minutes? Is that average time? Are you guys above average or? Second to best that night, did you say? Oh, that month. All right, that's pretty good. Pretty good, guys. Was there ever a panic? You guys thought we won't be able to do this? We stuck here all night? Do they have some kind of, in case of panic, break this and you can get out? I don't know. I've never done one of those. My whole life seems to be an escape room, so I just don't seem I need to pay for it. I'm still trying to find a way out sometimes. Okay. But anyway, so that was going on there. And then, are you guys doing something else on Saturday? Just a life group, just usual stuff. Okay. Glad to see that really becoming very active. That's very good. So, see, I wanted to hit a couple things that on what Alexander says. And I know we have her do the announcements, so I don't get involved. But just want to make a couple comments. First, the prayer circle was different this time. I mean, it's still the basic idea. We all gather together in a circle, and there's one person giving up the main prayer, and everybody else kind of supports it with whatever prayers. This one got emotional, guys got more personal. The first time we did, we had like sections that we're supposed to pray about, and that was just too difficult. This was a lot more free form. You could pray about whatever you wanted. And so that, it got personal and in a very meaningful way. Is my collar messed up? Is that what that means? I didn't know if that meant there was a snake behind me or I had to fix my collar, but there was a signal being given to me. Anyway, so it was pretty cool, and it's the 25th of September is the second one, or the third one. If you have not been there, I really encourage you to come and do it. And a lot of people say, well, I don't know if I can. I don't know how to pray like that. You're never going to get better if you don't practice. This is the thing that gets me. I play guitar. Some of you guys know that. I had to work at playing the guitar. At first it was painful, and at first I was really, really bad at it, and I had to work through it and develop the muscles and the reflexes to play. And I know there's people here who do a lot of things besides instruments, but everything you do in life, any skill you've ever learned, when you first start out, you're really bad at it, right? But for some reason, Christians say, well, I just don't know how to pray. I just can't pray. So I back off. Well, of course you don't. You haven't tried it yet. You need to get better at it. The only way to get better at it is by practicing it. And I know it's a little bit nervous when everybody else is praying out loud. I don't know if I can do that. Well, then pray quietly, but you got to practice, And if you look in the Bible, all the prayers we know about, the prayers they prayed out loud. They're always praying out loud in the Bible. And that's why we know about them. And I think this whole pray quietly to yourself thing has actually created a deficit in the Christian church today, because we all know how to pray silently. We don't pray out loud. We're supposed to call upon the name of the Lord. We had a couple people take the mic this time that said, I don't know if I can fill up. We asked for 6 minutes, but you could pass off the mic whenever, right? And one guy said, I don't think I can do it. I had to cut him off. He'd been going on for 8 minutes. Okay, look, you give the mic to somebody else. We have to give it to somebody else. So this is what happens. You just get in it, and it's no condemnation. Nobody's judging you. Victoria read an article recently about top 10 reasons or something like that people don't go to prayer meetings. And we've eliminated a lot of them. One of them is they don't know how long they're going to go. Sometimes they're going long. We promise you it's over at 8. So we keep to that. And a couple other things, we try to eliminate some of the concerns, but Honestly, if you're not here, it's because the devil's keeping you away because he doesn't want you to pray. He really doesn't. He does not want you to pray. And we can't get to anything else in Christian life until we get to that. That's the most important thing. I wanted to mention that. Second thing I want to mention is the Chosen that we're doing. I started out because I just wanted something easy. I wanted to be able to push play, and instead of having to prepare a sermon and a Bible study every week. But I'm really into this because I've been watching the guy who does it. His first name's Dallas. Oh, I can't remember his last name. You remember his first name's Dallas. He's really an interesting guy, very great guy. He's done all these different kind of behind the scenes. I was watching this round table. He says, funny, this is like a joke because he had a priest, a rabbi, and an evangelical preacher there with him. And so it's like we should all walk into a bar. It's a joke. But anyway, so but they were actually his consultants on the script. All three of these guys. He didn't want to offend the Jews. He didn't want to offend the Catholic Church. He didn't want to offend evangelicals. Good luck with that, But he had a discussion about the script, and I found it really useful. And I'm really enjoying it. I really appreciate his heart in this. I've gotten kind of through the videos, getting an idea of a little bit of his heart in this. I'm starting to see why it had such an impact because his heart is really in this. So anyway, so that's it. If you can't come here physically, although if you come here physically, sometimes we have cookies. That was 2 weeks ago. We had cookies. Janet B. chocolate chip cookies. They were amazing. But if you can't make it, Zoom in. If you don't have the email address, see Victoria and she'll get it for you. And you can join on that, and then we discuss it afterwards. So these are things that we're doing that not everybody's taking advantage of, and you ought to, because these are cool. This is cool stuff. And I can say that because I'm not actually involved in them. So I can do that. All right. So everybody online, say hi so we know you're there. We always like to know when you're there. We're finishing up this series today. We've been doing on Jesus. It's kind of weird. You'd think you'd do it around Easter, but for some whatever reason, I was led to do a series on Jesus here in the middle of summer. So that's what we've been doing. We're finishing it up today. And the idea behind this when we began was Jesus and nothing but Jesus. Try to strip out all the excess theology, all the things the Christian church kind of adds on. Just Jesus. It was funny when we started the very first week. I told Stas, I said, "Now I want songs, every song to mention the name of Jesus." And I told you what a challenge that is. If you look at the top 20 at CCLI songs, most of them mention God, not Jesus. But we are a Christian church, and so I said, I want all the songs to mention Jesus. And he came to me after the first week and says, "How long is this series going to go on?" I said, "I don't know yet." He said, "Because if it goes on more than 4 weeks, I don't know." It's like he's like, I'm looking through the catalog. There's not much there. But we finish the series. He can take a break next week. We can just do songs about Jehovah. But it's a challenge. It's weird, but it's a challenge to stay focused on Jesus in the Christian church in 2020. It's such a strange thing. We're finishing up today. Now, next week, I made this offer to the Saturday night I was going to say class, but service last night. And I'm going to make it to you too. I'm going to give you the title of the series. And if you want to play, here's a game. Guess what the series is about. And if you guess right, I give you M&Ms. That's the payoff, okay? So the name of this series coming up, Victoria's laughing. She had to confiscate M&Ms from me last night because I know what it is. And I thought, well, I can eat M&Ms then. No, you can't. Take them away from me. The name of the series is For Crying Out Loud. That's the name of the series. We're going to start next week. I don't know how long it's going to go. So if you want to play, text me, email me, send me a message. And if you're right, I'll bring you M&Ms next week. And if you get it wrong, you can bum off of them if they get it right. So next week we'll start that. All right. But we're going to finish up. This week is entitled Jesus the Hero, and Jesus is supposed to be our hero. Now, who doesn't like a hero? Well, except for F. Scott Fitzgerald, who seems a little cynical about it. This is a quote from him. He says, "Show me a hero, I'll write you a tragedy." And this is the guy who wrote The Great Gatsby. Anyways, that's a little bit cynical. But I loved heroes growing up. Loved them. Oftentimes it did end in a tragedy. He's right. But here's like a little collection of some books that I had read when I was a kid. When I got into high school, I got turned on to the classics. I read a bunch of the Robert Louis Stevenson stuff, The Black Arrow. I read the original Robin Hood and all that stuff. One of my favorite books of all time is Sword of Shannara. Read that when I was in high school. Loved that. The Princess Bride, probably the second most quoted book here at Spirit Chapel after the Bible, is The Princess Bride. We have the movie quotes all the time. Now, I got to confess, I never read The Lord of the Rings, but I saw the movie. That counts. I had a hard time reading Tolkien. Even though was a genius. But when I became a Christian, of course, I'm a preacher's kid, so you can't just have your heroes in other stories. And I know today, you guys, it's all about the Marvel universe or whatever, and those are your heroes. But in my day, my heroes came from books. But then it switched to the Bible heroes. Then it was okay because there's some great heroes in the Bible. Love David. David's like one of my absolute favorite characters in the Bible. He's such a unique guy. He's a great hero. But there's other guys too. We have Jonah. We have the Joshua who led them to take over everything. We just had so many great Gideon and all these great heroes of the Bible. And my dad, I'm a preacher's kid, like I said, and my dad was classically trained as a Presbyterian preacher. Now, what that meant was that he had an Old Testament lesson and a New Testament lesson every week. And they kind of matched, sort of. But he'd always read both, and then he'd always take a sermon out of the Old Testament. My dad preached out of the Old Testament, which I love because there was kind of good stuff in there. Weird stuff, too. I mean, the Old Testament gets in there. But anyway, when you got a little bit older, and you're kind of learning how to mature as a Christian, that's when you're told, well, Jesus is supposed to be your hero. And the real hero of the Bible is Jesus. And I go, okay, all right, so I'm going to change my hero. I'm going to focus on Jesus. Now remember I'm coming from, and so I'm taking all that knowledge and I'm focusing it on Jesus. And I'm like, I don't know about this. Is Jesus really a hero? Because he doesn't seem to match the heroes that I was reading about or watching on movies. And this is like a little deep secret I had growing up because I always kind of had this bad feeling because I never really felt Jesus was a hero. And I kind of hid that because I know that was the wrong thing to say as a Christian, especially as a preacher's kid. I couldn't really say that. But the problem with it is the things he said just don't seem heroic. And I really don't care who you get to say it. Some of the stuff he says just doesn't sound heroic. Now, I can't do an Arnold Schwarzenegger voice here, but if anyone hits you on the cheek, offer the other also. And if anyone takes away your coat, give him your shirt as well. That doesn't sound heroic. I can't picture Arnold saying that, right? Or any of the modern day heroes. I just can't picture it. It doesn't seem heroic to me. In my movies, you hit a hero on the cheek, you're asking for it. And if you take away his shirt, it probably means it was meaningful to him. He's going to hunt you down and kill him. That's how it goes in the movies that I watch. Can't imagine taking Tony Stark's shirt from him. He'd come after you. And so I'm like, I'm not really sure, but that's okay. One thing all heroes have in common, the really big stories that you read or watch the movies of, is they all face death well. Even the tragedies, even the movies that end with the heroes dying, and there are a lot of them, they always face death, with a gleam in their eye, and they're always brave. And the courage in the face of certain death was something. In fact, usually, if you're watching a movie, they get a great line. Some kind of a quote that leads you, yeah, and you go out of the movie theater. Yeah, I'll never forget that. Do you remember the movie 300, some of you? That evil, wicked, R-rated movie that I loved. Remember that? So King Leonidas, if you guys don't know the story, I think everybody does, but it's from history. 300 Spartans stood in the gates, what they call the hot gates, to stand against the Persian army. Now, in history, they are actually joined by 5,000 other Greeks, but we don't talk about them. There's only these 300 Spartans, and they stood there. Everybody else left. This is true. They all left, and all that was left was the 300 Spartans, and they held that gate for like 14 days before the Persians could get through. It's one of the greatest last stands in history, and they made this movie about it, the 300. And King Leonidas, right before they know it's over, this is it. Forget it. Tomorrow we're going to die. There's no way we're going to be able to stave off this attack one more time. He gives this big rousing speech to his men.
Spartans! Ready your breakfast and eat hearty. But tonight, we dine in hell!
Can I just say, worst motivational speech ever? I mean, are you kidding me? Tonight we dine in hell. That's like, oh. But they loved it. The Spartans all excited about it. And I was looking this movie clip up online. So, this was such a great moment. This is such a great moment. Really? This is a great moment? Tonight we dine in hell? Not only are we going to lose, we're going to hell? That's the great, boy, I'll just follow you anywhere, King. I just figured Spartans, they must be really easy to please. They must be very easy to motivate kind of a people. Kind of like, Spartans, tonight we'll dine in hell. Where the beer is warm and the service is terrible. Doesn't matter. You can tell a Spartan anything and they'll cheer, right? And Leonidas shouts, they all go. And they all died, of course, and we saw this tragic death. But even though they're easy to motivate, there's another movie that's famous. I'm going back a little bit, but some of you may have seen the movie Braveheart. It's about William Wallace, and he also faces certain death. In fact, he's going to die. There's no doubt about it. The only question is, will he be tortured before he dies? And there's a big moment in the end of it where they've actually captured him because they beat their army finally, and he's led this rebellion, and the king wants to kill him and make an example out of him. So they put him on a public display, and all this crowd gathers because what else are you going to do except watch them kill your hero before your eye? And they're torturing him, and I don't want to go into the details of what they're doing, but it's involving sharp metal hooks. And so they're torturing him, and he's great pain. And they said, look, we will end your suffering. All we need you to do is ask for the king's mercy. If you ask for the king's mercy, we'll kill you quickly. If not, you're going to suffer. Right? And this whole big scene goes on. It gets kind of drawn out as people in the crowd are like begging him to ask for mercy because they can't watch it anymore. And so finally he gathers up his breath for one last thing to say. And this, of course, is what he says. Freedom. He shouts freedom so loud, apparently he killed a king. I don't know exactly how that happened. But anyway, that's Braveheart, right? That's William Wallace. That's a true story. I mean, I don't know about the freedom part, but it's a true story. But we see these true stories. We see how our heroes face death. They don't back down from it. They face it. They don't, even when they know the next day is sure to be their death, they don't back down. So let's take a look then at Jesus' death, right? He's the hero of the Bible. This is my picture of a hero. He must have really faced death bravely, right? Wouldn't you expect the hero of the Bible to do that? And so he actually has a scene in the Bible where he faces off against Pontius Pilate. And it shows up in a couple of the Gospels. Now, this would be a good time to give Jesus a great line. If I'm writing a story, if I'm the author of that, which thank God I'm not, here's what I'm going to give him: a witty line, something really funny. Now, I understand Jesus is a pacifist. I understand he's not going to grab a sword and fight. I know that. But he has the Holy Spirit upon him, and he has all the gifts of the Spirit, which means he has the word of knowledge, and he's the word of wisdom, and he's standing in front of this punk, Pontius Pilate. And wouldn't this be a great time for a great word of knowledge from Jesus, which would just be a great moment in the movie? Like he says to him, "Don't you know who I am?" And Jesus says, "Yeah, I remember you. You're that kid who wet the bed until he was 12 and prayed that his mother wouldn't find out. Yeah, I know that. I remember that." Wouldn't that be a great thing? And you see him get all flustered and leave. But that's not what happens. Instead, this is what happens. Pilate says to him, basically, "You know who you're talking to?" Because Jesus isn't responding. He says, "You're not even talking to me? Don't you know that I have the authority to release you and the authority to crucify you? I hold your life in my hands." And what does Jesus say? "No, you really don't. The only authority you have is the authority my Father gave you." And that's all he says. And it's kind of brave, but not really that last line kind of heaviness that we're looking for. But I kind of understand that. It was prophetic, right? The prophecy 1,000 years before Jesus walked the earth prophesied this was going to happen. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb led to slaughter, like a sheep silent before his shearers, he did not open his mouth. So it was prophesied. For whatever reason, God said he can't defend himself. He can't have one of these witty moments. He has to remain silent, which he does. Okay, so let's back up before. Let's back up before that moment with Pontius Pilate. What about that moment in the Garden of Gethsemane? When he knows, nobody else knows, but he knows he's going to die. This is a famous scene. What about that? Because heroes always laugh in the face of death, right? Well, here's Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. He was so worried. He was so agonized over what was going to happen to him that he sweat like blood. Now that doesn't fit my picture of a hero. It just doesn't. And, I've kind of kept that boiled in most of my life because the stuff I didn't understand about Christianity, I kind of was afraid to ask. And this is one of the things I just didn't understand. What I've learned, since I got older, especially since I became a preacher, is all these things I just lean into them now. So, okay, God, I don't understand this, and I'm going to, lean into it. And so I'm going to lean into it with you because I think the Christian church has seen the same thing I have, and there seems to be a big effort on the Christian church's part to hide this, just to be honest. They actually try to explain it away. This is normal. This is something that anybody would do. And what we've done is we've just focused on the agony of his death. In fact, we made a play out of it. It's called Passion Play. Now, I'm curious, how many of you have ever seen a Passion Play live? Yeah? How many of you saw Mel Gibson's movie, Passion of the Christ? Right. So even, yeah. Okay, so this is the idea. This is a weird name for a play where Jesus ends up brutally killed before your eyes. But the idea behind the word the Passion Play is it's supposed to show you the passion Jesus has for you because he was willing to endure all this physical pain. And it's very focused on all the physical pain that Jesus faced with. Now, you might wonder where these came from because they don't show up until the 14th century. They're brought to you by the Catholic Church. In fact, these are the same people who gives us self-flagellation indulgences in the Spanish Inquisition. They also, about the same time, came up with the Passion Play. And they're going to present it to you. And the reason why they're doing this, I mean, I can't go back in their heads, but one of the reasons why, if you know the 14th, 15th century, it's a bleak time in history. And people were kind of like, I don't have time for this. I need something else in my life. And so the Catholic Church was trying to show, no, you can't turn your back on Jesus. Look what he did for you. Look how much he endured for you. So they actually will disappear after the Reformation, but they make a comeback. And now they're as strong as ever, really. There's some huge passion plays that go on. Guy comes to our church when he can. He's a guy named Scott Schmidt. Some of you know him. He played Jesus in the passion play for, I don't know, like 9 years or something. He kept inviting me. And I kept casually, no, I really can't make it. I don't like passion plays. I hate them, in fact. I don't want to, and I said this last week. Why would I want to watch some depiction of somebody I love tortured before my eyes? I don't like that. And it's not helped anything by these well-meaning preachers who have a passion sermon. You know what I'm talking about. Some of you have been going to church long enough, you've heard these sermons, right? This is where the preacher gets a hold somehow of a medical detail of the death of Jesus. Have you guys listened to one of these before? I have. I mean, to my dad's credit, I never heard him preach it, but I've been in churches my whole life. And usually around Easter, one year, you'll get the Passion Sermon. And they'll have a document there, and they'll describe to you in gory medical detail the pain and suffering that Jesus endured when he was crucified. They start with how the cat of nine tails, 39 lashes, ripped the skin, and they talk about the thorns in the crown and how it's put in and how all this stuff. I'm not going to go through it. I've never preached a passion sermon, except this is my passion sermon. But I've never preached about the physical pain of Jesus, and I'll show you why. I think when we do that, we miss the importance of what Jesus is trying to tell us and teach us. I actually think passion plays diminish the passion of the Christ. And I know why we're doing it, because we want to have this moment when we take all of your problems and put them up against Jesus' death and say, really? Really? You're gonna tell Jesus how bad you had it today? Do you know how bad he had it for you? Right? And I understand the power of something like this. You know, for those of you who don't know, that's Mel Gibson talking to this guy off set. Love this picture. It does kind of remind you sometimes of maybe I shouldn't be complaining so much. But I think we miss the point of the passion. The crucifixion, you'll hear this said, and I've heard this said by preachers, the crucifixion is the most painful death devised by men. Now, I don't know how you rank these things. I don't know if you have volunteers, rate a scale before they die. How painful was that? I don't know how you rank the most painful death, but I'm going to go on record and say I don't think this is true. Because men are incredibly sadistic when demons get a hold of them, and they have killed people in creative and inventive and horrible ways. And crucifixion's up there, but I don't know if you can say it definitively it's number one. It's a horrible way to die. It is a horrible death. But boy, if you read some of the stuff that goes on, especially like over in Asia or some of the Native American rituals, it was amazing. They keep them alive for a long time and kill them slowly. It was horrible. I don't know. And I think that this whole thing misses the point. It focuses on the brutality of the cross, and it ignores the real pain of Gethsemane. And I'm going to spend time today trying to get us to understand, if I can, the pain of Gethsemane, because Jesus doesn't need our excuses. In fact, he explains his pain rather clearly if we pay attention. So let me show you some things Jesus taught that seem to be forgotten when we focus on the passion being all physical. This is what he says in Matthew 6:25. This is why I tell you, don't worry about your life, what you're going to eat, what you're going to drink, about your body, what you wear. Isn't life more than food? Isn't the body more than clothing? Jesus' entire teaching is, look, I understand you're here on earth and I understand you have these concerns of earth, but I'm here to tell you about something beyond that. I'm going to take you out of what's physical into what's spiritual, because what's spiritual lasts. What's physical is only for a moment. His entire teaching was about that. And then in his death, we focus only on the physical. And I just think it really diminishes what Jesus did for us, because Jesus didn't want that. Jesus was always teaching us about the spiritual. And he also says this in Matthew 10, don't fear those who kill the body but are not able to kill the soul. Rather, fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Does this sound like a person who was afraid of the physical cross? This wasn't, unless he's a liar, because he's telling everybody don't fear it. Do you think he was in Gethsemane sweating blood because he feared the cross? No, that wasn't what made him drop blood out of his pores. This isn't it. And we have to understand it because in order to understand what Jesus really did, and in order to understand what Jesus really is calling us to, we have to understand it's so much more than the physical. It was not the pain of his body that caused the torment in Gethsemane. What he dreaded was a separation from his Father. Since the beginning of time, since before time, he and his Father were one. Now, we talked about this a couple times in a couple of these sermons, about how the word in Jewish, the Hebrew language, which means to know, is not intellectually to know, like I know my neighbor. It means to know intimately, like Adam knew Eve and conceived a son, right? It's to know in an intimate way, on every level, to be intimate with. Jesus and the Father were intimate in a spiritual level. From before time began, he had never known what it was like not to be that close to the Heavenly Father. And we see this in the Scriptures. I mean, the Scriptures are clear on this, and he talks about it when he's talking to his disciples. He says, look, don't you believe I am in the Father and the Father is in me? We know each other. We're in communion. It's not just I know who he is. We know each other. I know everything about him. He knows everything about me. He walks the earth knowing the Father. He never loses that because his soul is always here. The words I speak to you, I don't speak on my own. The Father who lives in me does his works. Believe me. Believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me. It's always been that way. This is a verse from, I'm going to move from Easter to Christmas. Here's a Christmas verse for you from John 1. In the beginning was the Word. That's Jesus, right? And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. All things were created through him, and apart from him, not one thing was created that has been created. Since before time began, he had been like this with the Father. And he's going to lose that when he's crucified. The crucifixion is going to bring this to an end. For the first time in eternity, the crucifixion ends it. And if we watch Jesus as he approaches the crucifixion, and we even watch him on the cross, we'll see it is not the physical pain. It's there. He's feeling it. I mean, Jesus is a man. I don't know how he does what he does. I mean, physically, I don't know how he does what he does. But that's not what causes him the grief. That's not what breaks him. It's the spiritual. And I'll show you the moment it happens. Leading up to it, as we walk up to it, we see that he's still comforting people around him. Now, in the Gospel of Luke, it tells us this. This is right after they beat him. Now, I'm going to get a little graphic here for a moment and apologize to you all for that. But I want to talk about the beating for a minute because this is what he's already endured. So first, he was whipped. He was whipped probably with a cat of nine tails, and it ripped open his flesh on his back. Now, in the book of Isaiah, the prophet tells us that by his stripes we are healed. They're talking about that. He bled from there. It wasn't just a whipping. I don't know if anybody played, like when I was a kid, you play rat tails. Any of you guys ever play rat tails with towels? Anybody ever do that? No, it's just me and my brothers. Okay, you get these welts when you get hit with those. It's not like that. It's not a welt. Or maybe you've accidentally been snapped by something that broke or something and you get a welt. That's not what this was. This ripped it open. He was bleeding. Okay, his back was such a bloody mess, in fact, that they couldn't physically put the cross on it anywhere for him to carry it, so they had to find another guy to carry it for him. The reason Simon the Cyrene was brought forth to carry the cross for him, even the Romans knew that was too much. And when it's too much for the Romans, it's pretty bad, right? So Jesus tries the best he can to carry the cross, but he stumbles, and they get this other guy to carry it for him because they realize with the back like that, he's not going to be able to carry this. He's also been beat. There was a whole section and they tell you where they put a mask on him and he'd hit him, mocking him. Hey, who hit you that time if you know so much? So they beat him. He was bruised all over, and they also put the thorn crowns on him, the crown of thorns. And the thorns, I've seen them. They're about 3 inches big. They're like needles. They're stuck in him, and he's bleeding. The Bible tells us that he was unrecognizable in his face from the beating that he took. So this is what he's already endured, all right? He's stumbling to the cross. I mean, a weak man would have been dead already. Some of these people that get to play him in Hollywood, like, come on, get real. Jesus was a strong man. He could not have endured this if he weren't strong. And on the way there, on the way to the cross, on the way, he sees some women falling by him crying because they know who he is. Right? They know that he was special. And they're following him, a multitude forms, and women mourned and lamented, and Jesus turns to his daughters of Jerusalem. Don't weep for me. Weep for yourselves and your children that this is happening. Weep, but not for me. He's actually trying to comfort the people around him. Can you imagine? He's in such pain. If you ever think this is a me moment, this might be a me moment for Jesus, but instead he turns to them and tries to comfort them. Now there's something famously known as the 7 last words of Christ. You may have heard of them. They're actually not words, they're phrases. But the 7 last things recorded in the scriptures that Jesus says while on the cross. And I want to show them to you because there's 7 of them, and right at the middle, at number 4, is when everything changes for Jesus. At the first 3, while he's sitting there with his lacerated back, beat, bleeding, and he's nailed to the cross now. They've actually put nails in him. He's still Jesus Christ being Jesus. Early in the morning, this happens. What's the first thing he says? The first words on the cross is this: Father, forgive him. Can you imagine? The first thing you say when you get up there, they've nailed you in place and put you up there to die. Father, forgive them. They don't even know what they're doing. Don't hold this against them on my account. I forgive them. I'm asking you to forgive them too. This is Jesus being Jesus. This is Jesus ignoring the physical pain and still being the Messiah, right? Nothing's changed in Jesus. He's facing the pain. He's working through the pain in a way William Wallace never could have. I don't even know how he's doing this. And his first thing is, forgive them. He's dying the way he lived. He's just being Jesus. Now, later on that same morning, what happens? Well, what happens is the thief on one side of him says, guy's clearly a fraud. If he was the real king of the Jews, the Messiah, he could get us both down and we could leave this place. Why don't you do that? And the thief on the other side says, shut up. We're here because we belong to be here. He isn't. He did nothing wrong. And then he turns to Jesus and says, remember me when you come into your kingdom, because he knows who he is. But I want you to show you what just happened here. What just happened is this thief realizes that he is being crucified next to the Son of God who is going to return to heaven, and he confesses that with his lips. He believes that Jesus is the Son of God, and he confesses that with his lips. Well, what are we taught on how to become a Christian? Believe in Jesus Christ, confess him with your mouth, right? He just did that. What does Jesus do? He turns to him and says, today you're going to meet me in paradise. I will take you. Yeah, I'm not going to just remember you. I'm going to take you with me to heaven today before this day is done. That's the first Christian, by the way. Really, honestly, the first Christian, because he's the first one who's actually saved by the cross. He's going to be with him in paradise. All my Baptist friends who for years and years said, name me one place in the Bible where someone's saved and not baptized. Right here. He's saved and he doesn't do anything after this except die. But Jesus is being Jesus. He's still saving souls. While he's on the cross, he's still saving souls. Nothing's changed. What about the third word of Jesus? Getting in the afternoon now. Jesus looks down and he sees Mother Mary, his mother, standing next to John. And look what he says. He says, woman, here is your son. And then he looks to John and says, here is your mother. And from that hour, the disciple took her into his home. So he looks to Mary and says, this is your son now. He'll take care of you. And he looks at John and says, take care of my mother. He's taking care of his mom. That's the third word. The physical pain is there, but he's past it. He's still the Messiah. Now, this might seem weird because Jesus literally has brothers. Maybe a little known fact, but he has brothers. In fact, one of them is his disciples. He writes a book called James. Why would Jesus do this? She has sons. Yes, but Jesus knows something they don't know. James is going to be martyred for the kingdom. In fact, every disciple is going to be martyred for the kingdom except John. John is going to live his full life. So he takes Mary and puts her in the care of the one disciple who's going to live through all this to the very end and take care of her to the very end. Jesus is being Jesus, right? Through all the physical pain, he's got it all. And by this time, it's like everything's on him. He can't hardly breathe. And everything you've heard in these horrible preaching sermons where they tell you all the details, I'm not going to go into, you can look them up. He's going through all that, but he's still working past the physical pain and being the Messiah. It changes with a fourth word. About 3 p.m, Jesus cries out with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? He's quoting the psalm here. My God, why have you forsaken me? And everything changes from this point. In fact, the next words come quickly. Jesus will die not long after this. This breaks him. What just happened? What happened is Jesus has taken on everybody's sin. Yours, mine, the centurions who were crucifying him, Genghis Khan, Adolf Hitler, all of them. In his entire life, he has never known what it's like to be evil. He has never known evil. He has never known sin. He lived a perfect, blameless life. And all of a sudden, this is all put upon him. And at that moment, this bond he has with the Father is broken because his Father can no longer look at him because he's covered in sin. And God has to turn his head away. And this breaks him. Like you could say this is like the moment he would need him more than anything else. And this is all Jesus here. He's all alone with your sin on him. This is what gets them. It's the spiritual thing that happens to Jesus. You want to know the passion of Christ? Don't look at the wounds. Look at the heart. Look at what he's willing to endure because this was worse than anything we can imagine. When your sins, my sins, everybody's were placed upon him and God had to look away. And that communion was broken because God cannot be with sin. And Jesus was suddenly all alone. The spiritual pain overwhelmed him. Physical pain did not make him cry out. It was a loss of the connection with the Father. See, the problem we have with this is we don't know what that's like. We have no idea what it must be like to have a perfect communion with the Father. We can only guess. And so when I'm sitting here saying, man, it must be terrible to lose it, we're like, really? I don't know. It's like going to a worm and saying, you know how awful it would be if you could never fly? And the worm going, nope, really don't. Can't quite get there in my mind. But the point of all of Jesus' teaching was he wants to give that to you. That was the whole purpose for coming here. It wasn't to heal you physically, although sometimes he does that out of his mercy. It was to heal you spiritually so you could experience what he lived with every day. That was the whole purpose of his death, was to restore you spiritually. This body's going away. This is all we focus on, this life, what I'm doing, what my neighbor's doing, how things are going. That's it. Now, Paul actually gets a glimpse. In the Bible, we get one small little glimpse. He has a glimpse of what that must have been like. And here's how he describes it. And he's actually so careful about it, he talks about it in the third person. I know a man. Everybody who's ever done counseling, a lot of times people come in and go, I have this friend who, and they're always talking about themselves because they think they're being, we always know, by the way, just so you know, we always know when you're talking about their friends, it's you. But anyway, I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. I have no idea what that means. No one does. I haven't hit any of them, by the way, just in case you're wondering about my righteousness. I haven't hit first, second, third, or fourth. I don't even know where this stands on it. But I was caught up to the third heaven Whether it was in the body or out of the body, I don't know. It is some overwhelming spiritual moment, right? He said, I don't know. I think I may be in there physically. He doesn't know. God knows. I don't know. And I know that this man, whether he was in the body or out, I don't know, but God knows, he keeps telling it, was caught up to paradise and heard inexpressible things, things that no one is permitted to tell. I was caught up into heaven, and I saw things that were amazing, and I'm not allowed to tell you what they were. But I'm telling you what, it was amazing. He had a moment of perfect communion with God, and it kept him going for 14 years. One moment. Jesus lived his whole life that way. 33 years on earth, he always had that. We don't know what that's like. And so when Jesus says, I'm really kind of agonizing close to death here, and I'm really hurting, and his disciples look at him, they have no idea what he's talking about. Because he knows a moment's coming when he's going to be cut off from his Father. And it's too much for him to take. The fifth word that he says, after this, Jesus, knowing that all things were now accomplished, that the scripture might be fulfilled, because he's always thinking about that, and he says, I thirst, because that was also prophesied. The sixth word, he bows his head and says, it is finished. And you would think that would be the last word, but there's one after that. And then Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Father, into your hands I entrust my spirit. And he breathed his last, and he died. He gave up his spirit to his Father because he knew he was gone. The spirit was going to be out of the body. His body was dying. So he gave his spirit up. And Jesus died. It happens fast after the sin gets put on him and God turns his face away. Happens fast. It's the spiritual nature of this, though. And if we don't understand that, then we don't understand what Jesus was here for. And we focus on all the wrong things. It must have driven Jesus nuts to see the Passion Play. No, it wasn't that. That's not why I was crying in Gethsemane. I told you the body doesn't matter. Why would you focus on that? It's the spiritual. We have to pray for a better glimpse of what it would be like to live our lives connected to God. Paul, after all this, after that third heaven, you know what he says in Philippians? You know what I want? That I may know him. Paul, the Apostle Paul, is still saying in the letter to Philippians, and he's writing that, by the way, from prison in Rome, you know all I want to do? I want to know God. He doesn't know him. He's saying, I want to know him. I want to know him in the Jewish sense. I want to be intimate with him. Here's all I want out of life. I want to be connected to God in such a way that I'm back in the third heaven. That's what I want. That's all I'm after. That was what his cry was as he was in prison, and he was on his way to death. I just want to know. If I could just know him like that, that's what I like. What was it like to lose heaven? I have no idea. All I know is if it made Jesus cry in the garden, it must have been awful. Because he was a man who was not afraid of the physical pain. Jesus suffered a loss we just can't imagine, and that is the true passion of the Christ. You want to know what it is? Don't look at the wounds. Look at the heart. The broken heart of Jesus is where the true passion comes from. The broken, beating heart. You want a hero? I'll give you a hero. In fact, I'll give you the most heroic statement ever uttered. It is this. It is finished. He came here, and he did it. And when he was done, he said, it is finished, and gave up his life. That's our hero. That's the hero of the Bible. Would you all please pray with me? Heavenly Father, thank you for sending Jesus here. The pain that Jesus experienced must have been horrible for you, to have to turn your face away from your Son. Lord, we can't even imagine what happened there on the cross. We take it for granted in wrong ways. Break down these walls and break our hearts, that we can receive this image of you being willing to suffer the worst thing in the world for us and never take that for granted. For I ask this in Jesus' name.